Hello and welcome. Whatever anybody wants to say about the series, I always gave Digimon a lot of credit for not having any real filler. Something relevant is happening in virtually every episode. I know I've referred to the series of evolution episodes that the show has sometimes as partially filler in a previous review, but I didn't mean that in a negative way. Yes, it's true that the episodes I've already reviewed are largely standalone episodes that exist largely for the purpose of introducing us to new monster evolutions, but they also do more than that. We've been introduced to these characters, introduced to this world, and the characters have started to develop a little bit. Not the case with this episode, which I believe to be full-on filler. There's a situation, one of the creatures evolves to handle the situation, the characters move on, and the situation is never mentioned again. Now, this is Mimi's episode, but in my personal opinion, this episode does not develop her character in any meaningful or interesting way, so I can't give it credit there. And to be perfectly honest, at this point, I've had enough of this world being introduced to me. We've already seen a lot of weird things, and I kind of get it. This episode does have some weird things, but I don't think they're particularly memorable, and I'm ready for something that means a little more beyond the scope of a single episode. But regardless, here we are, so let's go ahead and get this review started. The episode opens with the kids walking through the sewers. They start singing a stupid song when we get a clumsy transition to Sora feeling homesick. So all the kids start reminiscing on the things that they miss from back home. I actually like this scene quite a bit. They talk about things like taking a bath, drinking a soda, eating steaks, playing video games. It's all pretty relatable, and it's probably the stuff we'd miss if we were in a similar situation. One minor problem here though, Matt mentions the fact that he misses Sundays when his mom grilled steaks. He doesn't live with his mom. It's kind of weird that he would even know that, but even if he does, he doesn't stand to benefit from it because he doesn't live with his mom. It's a minor point, just probably a simple mistake that anyone could have made, but I wish people were paying a little more attention to this translation. So after this pretty good homesick scene, we hear some voices and some Numamon show up. They're these yucky little slime creatures that nobody really seems to like. They attack by throwing their own shit at people. I'm not kidding. Now, if you're familiar with the English dub, instead of poop, it's Numa sludge. Sounds kind of stupid, but I don't mind this censor. I mean, I don't need to hear about poop being thrown at people. The Numamon start attacking in the only way they know how, and the kids run out of the sewers. Oh, and for some reason, Mimi's narrating this episode. Obviously, Mimi's narrating it because it's her episode, but why do we need a narrator? None of the previous episodes needed a character narrating except for, I guess, the first one. And I find it kind of distracting that Mimi's narration is from the perspective of her in the future, remembering the events of this episode. I don't think this episode is any more or less confusing than any episode before it, so I really can't explain why they threw in narration. Maybe they thought it would make up for the fact that they didn't develop her character in any meaningful way. So the kids do a bunch more walking and eventually come to several dozen vending machines just sitting there in the middle of the desert. The other kids guess that they don't work and they're quite possibly a trap, but Mimi isn't hearing any of it and charges right for them. The other kids comment on how childish and stubborn Mimi can be, which kinda sounds like they're talking about her character, but I don't really see it that way. If this does constitute talking about her character, then it's in the most shallow way possible. Mimi is 10 years old, younger than everyone else in the group but TK. Really, it would be more surprising if Mimi wasn't childish and wasn't stubborn. Now, conveniently, a mistake the dubbers have made actually makes this scene better than it actually is. In the Digimon dub, they very rarely mention the fact that Mimi's only 10 years old. As a matter of fact, I went years just assuming Mimi was the same age as Tai and Sora. Now, if that was the case, her childish behavior might actually be an interesting character trait that would be worth talking about, But once you find out she's younger, well, it kind of becomes a no-duh sort of thing. But I'm not going to give the dubbers a free pass on this. Whether or not the dubbers want to talk about it, Mimi's only 10 years old, and we should hold her to the same standards we would anybody that age. Now, it's true that Mimi is also self-centered and stubborn, which are character traits that could be talked about a little bit and could possibly hold my interest. But we don't really get any of that in this episode. To me, the things she does in this episode all come back to her either being childish or working to overcome that. Or at least supposedly, but more on that later. So, Mimi goes up to the vending machines, but they are indeed traps and a bunch of Numemon pour out of them. One of them starts hitting on Mimi, which I kind of find disturbing because she's 10, but I guess this show did come from Japan. Mimi tells him to fuck off, he gets mad, and starts throwing his sludge at her, as do all the other Numemon. So our cast of characters come to Toy Town, a suitably weird place, but again at this point I think I've seen enough weird stuff to get the picture. Monzemon shows up, a big teddy bear Digimon who rules over Toy Town. Now, because of the little vending machine incident, the group is still separated and Mimi's currently on her own. Mimi quickly manages to find everyone else, but they're all acting a little strange. Basically, they're all running around like zombies, being chased around by apparently sentient toys, and continuously talking about how happy they are. Their partner Digimon, for the moment, are nowhere to be found. Mimi continues to fight off the affections of the Numemon and eventually finds all the other partner Digimon locked in a toy box of some sort. Basically, Monzemon is trying to brainwash all of the kids into forever becoming toys for the sentient toys. I still don't know how the toys are sentient, but it's really not that big a deal. Anyway, Mimi is the only one who hasn't been attacked by Monzemon yet, and it's thus up to her to save the others. The episode attempts to play up the angle of her being the only one who can save the others, but I'm still not really buying this. I mean, really, what else is she going to do? She's not going to last very long by herself in this world, especially because I'm pretty sure she doesn't have the food with her. So there's really nothing else she can do but try to attack Monzemon and save the other kids. Even if she was a terrible, despicable, selfish human being, she would have to try and save the other kids just for her own sake. When you look at the elements of the previous episodes that added something to the characters of the kids, they were something specific to that character that they did because of the way their personalities were made up. This just strikes me as her doing what she has to do. So, Mimi goes to confront Monzemon, and all the Numemon show up attempting to defend her by attacking Monzemon, which could have been a little interesting, but it never really seems to go anywhere. So, after the Numemon fail, Palmon evolves to Togemon, who actually looks pretty awesome. I gotta say, I like the design of this character, and if they ever put something like this in a Japanese monster movie, that would be even more awesome. Also pretty awesome is the fact that the fight between Monzemon and Togemon is completely unedited, because most of it is just them hitting the crap out of each other. So Togemon ends up purging the black gear from Monzemon, he frees all the kids, and again apologizes for his actions. With that obstacle out of the way, the kids leave Toy Town. I'm not saying you can't do interesting things with Mimi's character. There are future episodes that do this a lot better. But there's nothing interesting about Mimi being childish. She's a child. Of course she is. Furthermore, the things that she does in this episode don't really deal with the fact that she's childish. She just does what she needs to do, so even on that very shallow level, I don't see how this episode works. I will say that the dub never quite gets to its full potential in terms of dealing with the fact that Mimi is self-centered and stubborn, but there are episodes in the future that at least deal with these, and I guess do at least a half-decent job. So for now, I'll just say that this episode may have tried to develop Mimi's character a little bit, but I think they failed, and for that reason, I think this episode on the whole fails. Thank you.